If you watched my last video, you would know that this car right here, whose spirits are currently being lifted by my assistant, hi, is a Nissan Figaro belonging to Alec from the YouTube channel Technology Connections. Hello! And if you didn't watch my last video, well, now you know all that stuff because I just told you. What you probably didn't know, however, is the reason this Figaro is in my shop instead of tucked away in Alec's garage behind a Chevy Bolt or whatever. Well, the reason is because I stole it. Alec needed someone to perform some basic preventative maintenance on his Figaro, so he thought the perfect person to ask to do this job was a mechanic who has no qualifications as a mechanic, lives in another state, and whose most notable characteristic is being a clumsy idiot on the internet. Me. And the jobs he's asked me to perform on his Figaro are largely indicated by the parts that he sent with me. Like that one. And the parts he sent with me are, in no particular order, oil. And yes, I realize that's not a part. A distributor cap, which is a part. New spark plugs, engine mounts, 4 oil filters, 2 air filters, some new horns, a new water pump, a timing belt and tensioner pulley, a distributor rotor arm, a valve cover gasket, a coolant temp sensor, a water pump belt, an alternator belt, and an air conditioner belt, spark plug wires, brake pads, and finally, brake rotors. Well, this is rather a lot to do in a week. But thankfully, I don't have to do all of this. He sent with me all the parts that he has for this car. He went on a little bit of a part buying spree, buying things that may be useful in the future, not necessarily everything that is needed to be done now. Obviously, he doesn't want me to perform 4 oil changes. That would be silly. The main thing he wanted me to do, the most important thing, is to replace the timing belt and all the stuff around the timing belt, i.e. the water pump, the engine coolant temp sensor, and all the little belts. Everything else I get to, either if I have enough time or if I just want to, is just icing on the cake. So we'll see how much I can get done in a week. But let's start with the timing belt replacement because that's the most important thing. Here's the reason I jacked it up. I got to remove this engine mount. It was on there tight. There we go. 1 engine mount. All right, 2 down. According to the camera, I spent 40 minutes getting those 2 bolts out. There's only 3, thank God. Last bolt. This stupid headache of an engine mount out of here. I went out and bought myself a new tool today. They finally started selling these in the United States, not just in Australia anymore. And by the way, Ryobi does not sponsor me, and at this rate, they probably never will. I've given them so much free advertising, unless they just wanted to be nice guys and support the channel. That'd be pretty cool. But I don't expect that to happen. Anyway, let's get back to work. And I'll mark the cam there and the belt. Put a mark on everything down here too. Oh, this comes off. Pull out the tensioner spring so it don't get lost. And then gently remove the timing belt. Try not to budge any of the gears, although it doesn't really matter because I've got it all marked up. There we go. Timing belt removified. If you're unfamiliar with why it's so important to change the timing belt in engines with one on regular intervals, let me explain it to you. The engine in the Figaro is what's known as an interference engine, meaning the pistons and the valves share the same space in the combustion chamber, but at different times. The timing belt is the thing that controls the positions of the valves. If it breaks, well, the valves could be stuck in the down position, and then when the piston comes up, it will smash into the valves and bend them. Then you're looking at an engine rebuild. At the very least, you'll have to replace the bent valves in the head, but more than likely, other things will be damaged in the process of bending those valves. So that's why it's so important to replace the timing belt in interference engine cars like the Figaro, on regular intervals. Shoot, even if you have an engine with the timing belt that's a non-interference engine, it's still important to replace the timing belt on regular intervals, because if the timing belt snaps, the engine may not destroy itself, but it's still not going to work. That's generally what you'd like engines to do, is, work. See that little yellow plug down there? That's the plug for the engine coolant temp sensor. I just replaced it, and I didn't film it because I couldn't even see what I was doing. There was no way I could stick a camera down there. Anyway, I'm telling you about it now. It took about an hour to replace because it's so incredibly hard to access. And now I can remove the water pump. Oh, and there's the old water pump. Now to fit the new water pump in place, very gingerly, using a contortionist act, basically hugging the fender of the Figaro right now. Everyone needs a good hug, even cars. And that's the new water pump in. Here's the old timing belt, and here's the new one. Quite honestly, the old timing belt looks perfectly fine. There's almost nothing in terms of signs of wear and tear on it. But we have to replace it anyway because, well, for one thing, I'm in there, and we have no idea the last time this thing was changed. This could be a year old, it could be 30 years old, we have no idea. But before I put the timing belt, the new timing belt, in place, I have to transfer these marks from the old timing belt onto the new one, so that I can line it up exactly as it came off of the car. One mark here. There we go. Mark up with the mark on the camshaft pulley. Now I just need to feed this timing belt through the tensioner pulley like that, and make sure the timing mark is on the same place on the crankshaft pulley, and it is. I consulted the manual, and the manual said the next step is to crank over the camshaft pulley backwards by 2 rotations to make sure that this side of the belt is tensioned and that I can set that tensioning pulley down there appropriately. So to crank over the camshaft pulley, I had to make this special little tool here, which is 2 holes drilled into it for bolts to stick through, and the bolts engage into the 2 holes on the camshaft pulley there that you can't see because this air conditioner hose is blocking it. There, 2 holes in the camshaft pulley, and I've hand filed a square hole in the middle, and you know what that means? My hands hurt. But also a ratchet can engage in there, which is why I did the square hole thing in the first place. So I can now crank over the camshaft backwards. Very difficult as well. Oh, it doesn't want to move. Oh, two turns. Oh my God, that was torture. Click. And now I can put the crankshaft pulley back in place. Should probably turn the air on. There we go. Click. Just kidding, I forgot to reinstall the lower timing belt cover, so this pulley has to come back off. Now I can put the pulley back on. There we go. Now I can put the accessory belts back in place, starting with the power steering belt here. It has to squeeze between these 2 pulleys. Now the alternator belt. And lastly, the new air conditioner belt. By the way, the air conditioning in this car does actually still work. Let's get the upper part of the timing belt cover back in place. Now to put this engine mount back in, because that'll be fun. All right, this little bracket is in place, and that was no easy feat. The 3rd bolt over here is surrounded on 3 sides by a metal flange, so I had no finger access to that bolt. I had to screw it in place and bolt it down and tighten it and everything without finger access. So let me tell you how I did that, because I found it interesting. Maybe it's a useful tip for you all at home. First thing I did was I took my bolt and my appropriate socket. I put a little tiny dab of CA glue on the bolt. Put that in the socket. Spritz the activator on the CA glue. And my socket is on this giant extension wrench here. And by giant, I mean my little one, because it's skinny and it could fit into the tight place very easily. And then I went in from underneath the car. I fed the extension wrench up in there, and this is how I screwed the bolt into place from a long distance, because I had no finger access to it. Then the CA glue was stronger than the detent on the extension wrench, so that popped out. And then I had to go in, to extract this socket off of the bolt with my extra super duper long needle nose pliers. This is the kind of crap you need to have on hand if you're going to work on tightly packed Japanese cars, apparently. Now let's go replace this engine mount. By the way, if you're interested in tools like this, I will have Amazon affiliate links in the description below. Yeah! Good Lord, that was difficult. There! It's in! The new engine mount is in! Now we can do something else. Like usual when I do anything potentially catastrophic to a car, I've got the butterflies before I start it up. Alright. Scared. Which is fine. Woo! I didn't break it! Yay! With the timing belt and other surrounding jobs done, I'd like to take a moment before I move on to something a little more serious to tackle something that's been bothering me. The grill. It's currently being held in place with zip ties. So let's fix that. These little plastic clips here are what hold this grill into the car, and they're really clever in design. You can see they have a little straight slot across them, and they're square in profile, so to get them out, you just twist it with a straight slot screwdriver, and they just pop out, which is genius. The problem is, as you might have expected, these clips are old and they've just perished. This one has lost its springiness over the years. You can even see a crack right up here at the top. That's not going to hold anything in place. So I need to find a suitable replacement for these little plastic clips to hold the grill in place. To replace those little broken plastic clips, I went out and bought these. These are just license plate nuts. They're little plastic clips that just clip into square holes and you can screw through them. That's what I'll be using to fix the grill into place. And there we go. The grill is unzip-tie-ify. De-zip, zippity-doo-dah. It's fixed now. My solution isn't quite as elegant as the factory solution, but it'll work. Let me briefly gloss over a problem on this car that I am not going to tackle, and that is the rust. You can see a few cancer spots, cancer bubbles around the wheel arch here, and there's a few holes in the sill down here. It's really not too bad, but it does exist. And the reason I'm not going to tackle any of these rust problems is because I am not a body man. I'm more into personality. So this will be someone else's problem to fix, if he decides to do anything about the rust at all. This car is perfectly usable as is, it just has some blemishes around it. And it'll be a lot of work to fix them. So, I'm gonna not touch it. I have new spark plugs, plug wires, a distributor cap and rotor for this car, so let's inspect all those bits and see if any of them need replacing. And maybe replace them anyway, even if they don't need replacing, because I'm wasteful. And I have the parts on hand. It would make me feel like I did something. There we go. There's the screw. And the rotor arm should just slip right off. There we go. The spark plugs look a little bit dirty, so I'm going to replace them. The rotor arm looks fine, aside from a tiny little bit of buildup on the edge here, so I'm going to replace it. There's a bit of buildup on the connections of the distributor cap in here. Looks like corrosion. So I'm going to replace the distributor cap. And there's nothing wrong at all with the spark plug leads. So I'm going to replace them. Rotor arm first. There we go. It's in. New cap. New plugs. Alright, I don't have the right size socket to drive those in. Alright, back from town. Got the new spark plug wrench. Go at it. I've got an issue. I need to lose some weight. But also, I can't get this fourth spark plug out. It's not that the spark plug is jammed in place or anything, it's that I can't get the socket down in there. And it's not that the socket's too big. Somehow, on this spark plug, the head bolt that's right next to it interferes with the socket. I don't know how this head bolt interferes with the socket going down in the spark plug, and all the other head bolts have not been a problem, but that's what the issue is. And it only just slightly interferes with the socket, just enough that I can't get the socket all the way down in there to get a grip on the spark plug, to loosen it, to pull the spark plug out. So if I want to get this fourth spark plug out, and I did consider just ignoring it, I need to get creative. I bet you've never seen someone turn a socket on a wood lathe before. Depending on how this goes, you might never again. Let's go. Is that enough? I guess we'll find out. Didn't get the socket quite small enough the first time around, so I made a trip back to the improper tool lathe and slimmed down the socket a little bit more. Let's see if it works this time. Oh my God. Oh my God! A miracle has been performed. I used a wood lathe to extract, well, indirectly, to extract this spark plug that I'm still having trouble. Oh, forget it. I can't get that with my hands. Yay! I certainly can't recommend using a wood lathe to do what I just did, but it worked. I managed to turn down this socket just barely small enough to fit past that head bolt and extract the old spark plug. So Grizzly, if you're watching, could you send me a metal lathe, please? No? Okay. That's fair. If you're wondering how I'm going to fit the new spark plug in place, well, that is a pretty easy question to answer. The new spark plugs have a different size hex shank on them. Shank? Is it called a shank? I don't know. It's 5/8 instead of 13/16, which is much smaller. So the socket to put the new spark plugs in place has plenty of wiggle room, and I'll have no trouble putting the new spark plugs in. Thank God. Uh-oh. I thought I replaced everything as is. I didn't change anything, so what's going on here? Ugh, need to tighten a belt. Oh, it's running fine now. I don't know what that was about then. Oh man, need to tighten that belt. Air conditioner belt. Ho-ho! So the ignition system is good. Maybe I'm just slowly making this car worse. Maybe I should have just not touched it. Tighten up that air conditioner belt before I forget about it. You know what I haven't done yet? Oil change. I replaced one engine mount when I replaced the timing belt because the engine mount was in the way, but there's two more engine mounts holding this engine in place, and they're both a little bit saggy, so I should probably replace those too. That looks like just enough for us to make this last engine mount difficult. One. There we go. 3 of 3. Oh, that sounded like progress or something breaking. It should just pop out now. Like that. Oh, good. Get out of here. Yeah. There we go. Yay, the new engine mount's in. No, I didn't record it. The camera was in my way and I was getting annoyed with it. You don't need to see how it goes back in. It's just the same as it came out, only with a little more struggle in there. Let's have a quick look at the new parts I have remaining. I've got two air filters here. I had a quick look at the air filter that's in the car, and it's clean as a whistle, so I didn't bother replacing it. So these are two air filters for future replacement. I've got three oil filters here. While I could change the oil in the car 3 more times, that would require me going out and buying more oil. Also, it'd be a little bit excessive. So these are 3 oil filters for the future. Got a set of brake pads for the front of the car. The rear brakes are drum brakes. The brake pads on the car have significant life left, so I don't need to replace them. Brake rotors. I had a look at the brake rotors on the car and they look fine. If I'm honest, I did not measure them because I do not have proper measuring tools, but they look fine, and considering the brake life that's left on the pads, I thought they'd be okay. So these are for the future. Valve cover gasket. The valve cover is not leaking oil, so I'm not going to replace this because it doesn't need it. The oil pan is leaking oil, but I don't have a replacement gasket for it. I could make a new one out of RTV, but I had a look at the oil pan and it looks like it was more trouble than it was worth to get that thing off of there without the engine being outside of the car. So I'm just going to leave it. What's a few drops of oil on the floor in a week? It's an old car. You expected to do that sort of thing. Besides, it's not like it's just dousing the floor in oil. It really is just a couple of drops a week. So that leaves these horns. The Figaro has 2 horns, but only one of them works. This is a safety concern. I mean, it's a mild safety concern, but it's a safety concern nonetheless. Get out of my way! I've got an emergency supply of Japanese cuteness coming through. So that's it. The Figaro is done. If I wanted to be more thorough and if I had a little more time, I would do things like check the valve clearances under the valve cover, but I'm not that thorough, and he's here to pick up his car. So let's find out what Alec thinks of the repairs done on his Figaro. Let's call him in.
Hi, the repairs were successful. The vehicle is still working. I'm very thankful for that because I had my doubts. But actually, it's working slightly better than it was before. You'll never know that it was working worse unless you drove it before now, and only I did that, and Robert a little bit, but, you know, it's better. Although I could have also forgotten it's been like 4 months, but, you know, that's fine.
I wasn't holding it hostage.
That's true. He wasn't. But, no, seriously, all things are fine. But I'm very happy to have it back.
Would you like to go for a test drive now?
I would love to go for a test drive.
Let's go. So, is it good?
It's very good. I'm very happy. It's in motion, which is my #1 prerequisite. That it still drives, and it does.
All right, well, thanks for watching. Go watch Technology Connections,
Yes.
and I'll see you next time.
Bye!
And maybe subscribe to my channel, too, if you want to.
Oh, you know, that's a good idea, especially Underdone. If you're not subscribed to his second channel, you should do that. It's good.
Bye.
Okay, bye!